Once you send your PDF from Cam Scanner onto your computer, you're going to take that PDF, in my case it says froggif.pdf, and place it in this looping GIF folder structure I've provided you, and that's going to go in the scans folder. I actually already have a copy there, so I don't need to do that. And so there it is, this froggif.pdf in the scans. Now we've got four folders. We've got project file, scans, stills, and then the exports. These scans, this is going to be the images that we took from Cam Scanner, or if you had a physical scanner, that's going to be where those come in. And you're going to take this PDF, right-click it, and say Open with Adobe Photoshop. Now when you open up Photoshop, like so, and you open up a PDF, it's going to ask you which pages of the PDF you want to upload. The default is just the first one, but if you click on the first one and hold down Shift and then click on number 6, it's going to highlight all 6 of them, and when you hit OK, you'll get one tab on Photoshop for each PDF page. Now I just want to do a quick quick introduction to moving around the Photoshop screen, especially for those that it might be the first case. Just like in Premiere, where we had different types of viewing options and we were using editing on Premiere, when we're in Photoshop, we can set our view space to this workspace. I'm just going to toggle off of it first, and then I'm going to go onto it. So we can go to Essentials Default, like so. And the two things that we really need to worry about is that we have the Layers tab here in the bottom right, and then the Actions tab up here. We're going to be using both of those today. Another thing that you need to know about moving around Photoshop, just like in Premiere, you have a default cursor, which is the same key, V as in Victor, that you can use to select things. And then the second thing that you're going to need to know about is zooming in on Photoshop. To zoom in, if it's on a Mac, you're going to hold down Command. If it's on a PC, you're going to hold down Control. And you can hit the plus sign to zoom in. And to zoom out, you can just keep holding that Command or Control and use the minus sign. That's how you go in and out of your artboard. The next thing you need to do, or you're going to need to know about, is moving around this artboard, especially when zoomed in. Just like in Premiere, if you hit H for the hand tool, you can click and drag your way around the interface. One last shortcut I wanted to tell you about. If you're zoomed in or too far out and you want to default back to the default zoom settings, you can hit Command 0, and that'll bring you, and it'll just fill your screen with the artboard. What I want us to do right now is adjust the levels of our drawing. Now from Cam Scanner, with that magic filter, it actually turns out pretty good and crisp, but we can actually make it even crisper. And so if you go to mode, sorry, not mode. So let's adjust the levels. And you can do that by going to Image, Adjustments, and then Levels, or Command L. And you are greeted with it, and what you're greeted with right now are the levels of color in your file. And this is what it looks like. So just like on Premiere, our sound has like a graph that can tell you if it's like low, that means there's low volume, high for high loud noises. This graph right here on the left shows you the amount of dark colors. In this case, it's this black that's in the frame, and you'll see it's just barely much. And then on the right, that's the amount of light colors. In this case, my white, that's really filling in the screen. And so what we need to do is darken the darks, and you can do that by clicking on this cursor here on the left and sliding it over. You'll see it's going to change the color of my pencil lines from charcoal gray to a nice dark black. And we're gonna bring the whites in, because right now here, especially when you boost up the dark colors, you get all these other ghost images around it. You're gonna tighten it up from the right side as well to remove all that. You should have a nice, clean, crisp drawing like that. And then Command 0 to go back. And I'm actually gonna touch up a couple things here and there. I'm gonna hit B for my brush tool. If you've used MS Paint, I don't even know if that's a thing anymore, you can brush over some things. And if you hit D, D as in dog, that's gonna toggle this over here. These are the two colors, black and white. Those are the default black and white. And you can toggle between those two. Whichever square is above is the color that you selected, and you flip them using those arrow keys. And there, I'm just going to clean up that little mark over there. The rest I can take care of later, but I just wanted to clean that up first. Once you've adjusted the levels, so you have some clean lines, what we need to do next is run what's called an action in Photoshop. Now in Photoshop, there's all these different things that we can do to our images. We just adjusted the levels. We can also change the color settings. I have compiled a series of adjustments that's going to help get you ready to start coloring your images. It's basically just going to jumpstart the GIF or GIF coloring and painting process. So if you open up your Actions tab on Photoshop, if it doesn't show up, you can actually just go to Window and then Actions, and do that again. And on the top right of the Actions tab is this little hamburger menu. If you click on the hamburger menu, you can go to Load Actions, and in this looping GIF folder structure I've given you, you can go to the project file, and inside there is this .atn for action file. You can click on that and it's going to open up this action file down here. So it's within this folder called Looping GIF Bitmap. And I've created this action here called Bitmap 300. And I'm just going to show you what it's going to do. It does a bunch of conversions to the mode. And what it essentially does is makes all of these black lines clean black pixels, and it deletes everything else. And then we can start coloring it, and it's just going to look nice and crisp. It's a lot, so I'm basically just going to have it do it itself, and then you can kind of see what it does. So if you go to the Actions tab, click on the Bitmap 300 label right there, and then hit play below. All right, so now you'll see the most noticeable thing that happened is before I had this white background behind my picture, and now I see this checkerboard. Now this checkerboard doesn't mean that that's the background. This white and gray checkerboard on Photoshop means that it is transparent. That means there's data about these black lines here, but there's no data on the color of the background or anything in between this frog. It's basically a blank canvas for us to fill. Another thing you'll notice that if you zoom in, you can see that all of the lines of my drawing have been set to black and nothing else. Before we had some spots of gray, some blurry lines, and now it's just all clean black lines. And it's going to be really easy to color from here on. So another thing it did that the action did is it gave us two layers. The top layer is called background copy, and that's where all the lines of my drawing are. And beneath it is this blank layer called layer 1. There's nothing there right now, but we're probably going to end up filling it later on with stuff. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to select, let's actually fill in some spaces that are easy to fill in. So if you go to the left, I think on the default toolbar, it'll be like this tool called the gradient tool. If you click and hold it, you can switch from the gradient tool to the paint bucket tool. And then once you select it once, every time you hit the letter G, G as in good, you can select the paint bucket tool. Now again, if you've used Microsoft Paint or any photo and digital drawing interface, this paint bucket tool is going to fill any enclosed space with a single color. So I'm going to click over here. Now, right now it's set for white, but if I double click it, I get this color picker, and I'm going to choose a nice bright orange color for the eyes of my frog. And it's going to fill in like that. Now, one common mistake people do, let's say I had this layer selected, layer 1, and I tried filling it in, you would get really confused and you'd think, whoa, what happened? I thought this was an enclosed circle. It should have just painted in that section right there. Well, it would, but you had selected layer 1. And that means here, again, there's nothing going on here. There's no lines, there's no pictures. So we actually have to go to background copy there. Select that. This background copy has all those lines. And that's where when you fill that in, you get that fill like you hope to have. Now I'm going to fill in some more enclosed spaces that I have, trying to set the colors that I want for my animation. I'm going to choose this nice vibrant green for that section there. When you fill in a shape that's not totally enclosed, like this one here, that's not what you want to, and that's not how you want it to be. Before I was telling you, you could go to the layer, that first layer, and go underneath it. You can actually just patch up those holes, switch back to your paint bucket, and then fill it in like that. And that's going to be a lot easier. So here's my first still. And once it's colored in like so, you can go to File, Save As, and you're going to go to the Still section here, and I'm going to export it. Make sure that you change your format to a PNG, because that's going to allow you to keep that transparent information. And I'm just going to keep the name as is, but save it as a PNG. How was that? Was it tedious? Well, they used to do this by hand with paint, with real paint. So anything we're doing now is easier than how they used to make those animations. Now we're going to repeat that same process for the rest of these frames. All right, and here's another reminder that once you have your 6 frames all colored in, you're going to save them in the O2 stills file as PNG files. And once you've saved all of them, you can exit out of each of them. You don't have to save. Now what we need to do is put together our animation using Photoshop and the timeline feature on Photoshop. If you go to your folder, you go to the O2 stills folder, we're going to right-click that first one, in my case it's frog1.pdf, and open that first file in Photoshop. What we need to do next is place the next 5 frames into Photoshop. So you can go to Place, Embedded, and you can place them one by one, like so. But it's actually quicker if you go to your Finder or File Explorer and click and drag them here. It's going to ask you how big you want each of them to be. You can just hit enter to say yes. All right, and so here's my 6 frames, like so. They're all in their own individual layer on Photoshop. And if you're good about aligning each of the frames to each other, back when we scan them in using Cam Scanner, you won't need to do anything else besides turn them into an animation. So what I'm going to do next is go to Window, and I want you to open up this window called the Timeline. Now, a lot of people don't know, but Photoshop actually has a built-in capability to create short movies from your drawings, and you're going to do that by using the Timeline feature. So once you open up Timeline, at the bottom, you're going to get this pop-up, and you can say Create Video Timeline. And now we get this sequence, which looks similar to iMovie, if any of you used that before. But I'm actually going to switch and toggle the mode to this mode in the bottom left. It's called Frame Animation. So I'm going to click that, and it's going to switch to this view right here. And after that, I'm going to go to this hamburger menu in the timeline and say Make Frames from Layers. And now, here in my timeline, I've got my 6 frames from my looping GIF animation, but we need to change one thing to them. So if you click on the first one, hold down Shift, and select 6, it's gonna select and highlight all 6 of your frames. And on any of them, if you click on this down caret, select that, and you're gonna change the timing on it. I'm going to change mine to say 0.2. I think that'll work. That's 0.2 seconds. So what you're saying is each of these frames, Photoshop is going to display it for 0.2 seconds, which is like nothing, like a blink of an eye. And then it's going to switch to the next one and the next one and the next one. And one thing that you should also make sure is toggled is here. I think the default might say once, but if you click it and select forever, then it's just always going to play. And now I'm going to click play. See how that feels? One thing to note is that on Photoshop, it actually plays a little slower than it will when you export it as a GIF. So mine's actually going to be a little bit faster, but I'm still going to test it to see if I like it better as a faster sequence. And you can actually change it to be an in-between. So I'm actually going to select mine and say other. I'm going to say 0.15. Let's see how that feels. I like that. All right, so select a timing for your frames that you think works well with your animation. And once you have that down, we're going to crop our animation. Because right now we have all this information here. I don't want to see that anymore. I definitely don't want to see this ghost image from Scan with Cam Scanner. So if you hit C for crop, or if you select on the left here, this Photoshop tool called the crop tool, this is going to let you change the size of your canvas. And so I'm going to shrink the size of my canvas to just fit my frog animation. Let's see if that works. And then once you select the size of your canvas, you can hit enter. I hope this fits. you'll see that some of my frames are a little wider, so I'm actually going to hit C one more time and bump it out a little bit. All right, and once you're happy with how your animation looks in Photoshop, the last step is to export it as a GIF. Before I do that, I'm actually going to save this project file. I'm going to go to File, Save As. Oh, I actually just noticed that some of my frames are cut off a little bit. So one more time, we're going to go to File, Save As. And in the looping GIF folder, you're going to go to the project file, save it as whatever GIF you want to save it as. And once it's saved, you can go to File, Export, and say Save for Web Legacy. This is going to give you the option to save this animation as a looping GIF. And so here's what it looks like. Now, one thing that you're definitely going to want to change is the size of it, because right now my image size is huge. It's like 1700 pixels. Most GIFs are pretty small. We can actually keep it down. I'm going to just set it to, let's say, I'm just going to say 640 pixels. I think that'll be fine. Because again, GIFs are something that we load really quickly on websites or on social media. It's important that they're really easy to load. And once you do that, you're going to hit Save. Go back to Looping GIF and go to Exports. And you can save that GIF there. And here, look, here it is. It's finished here. You'll notice that there's a couple little specks here and there that I have that I didn't collect. But overall, I think this animation looks pretty smooth, and I'm pretty happy with it. Once you have your animations, your GIFs ready to go, you can upload them to the Google Drive folder with your name on it. It's in the portfolios. And you're going to paste a copy of it there. And then we're finished with our first experiment, the looping GIF.